pauses for a moment that it's in progress and probably ask you to accept it. I did also want to mention that we have additional webinars as part of these series, so please be sure to check out the other fact or fiction webinars, as well as mark your calendars, because October 21st is Wear Purple Day. We'd love to have you participate, share on social media, and raise awareness. So without further ado, I will go ahead and mute myself and get off camera, and Patience, take it away.
Okay, Jessica, would you like me to turn on my camera as well?
That is completely up to you. If you just want to do it as a presentation, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, great. We'll go for it this way. Okay, so hello, everyone. Again, my name is Patience Taylor. I want to just go ahead and jump into the presentation because Jessica gave me a great introduction. This presentation is going to be about fact or fiction when it comes to the DV shelter. I thought this was a great subject because a lot of times when I talk to survivors or people who just are inquiring about services, they don't know that this help is here or they don't know what we offer. So it's important that we get this information out in the community. I'm going to be honest, before I began working here, I had no idea that it was an organization that helped so much for women going through domestic violence issues or things like that. In my mind, I thought Peace River was only about mental health. So it's important that we get the word out about exactly what Peace River offers and how much of an asset it can be in the community, okay? During each slide, please write any questions that you may have in the chat section and I will address them in between each slide. Please ask any and all questions. There is no such thing as a stupid question. I want to emphasize on that because I know a lot of people get nervous or they're a little bit shy. So just write it in the chat section. I'll check the chat session as we go through, okay? Okay, so the first slide says, you cannot come into shelter unless you press charges on your abuser. This is completely fiction. This is a common misconception when it comes to the shelter because a lot of times our survivors think that this determines if they are accepted into shelter or if this means that they are actually a victim or not. Making a police report is not what makes you a victim in our eyes, and it is not a requirement. You can still be accepted into shelter if you have not contacted the police due to the domestic violence. However, in order to come to the shelter, you must be escorted by a police officer. This does not mean that you have to go into detail with the officer about why you need shelter or what transpired in order for you to need shelter. It is as simple as showing up to the local police department and saying, hello, I've been accepted into Peace River Center's DV shelter and I need to be escorted. That is all. A lot of times when we get people who call the hotline, and we explain to them the protocol about going to the police department, it is discouraging and they don't want to do it because they almost feel like we're pressuring them to involve law enforcement. And that is not the case. The only reason, honestly, for you to go to law enforcement, for them to escort you to the shelter is just that so that we keep the location secure and that we don't give out the address. This only is to help the safety for those who are already in shelter as well as yours, just in case the survivor is being followed by the abuser or if the abuser has someone else following them. If you go to the police station, you're less likely to be followed in that state. So that is what that is in place for. It has nothing to do with pressing charges or not. So again, before I move forward, and that is fiction, you can come into shelter if you decide not to press charges, okay? Okay, so the next slide says, fact or fiction, you can go and come as you please. There is no curfew. This is actually a fact. If the survivor has their own transportation and it is still a requirement that they be escorted by an officer, the survivor would just follow the police officer to the shelter in their own vehicle. Most survivors compare our shelter to local shelters that require them to take their belongings daily, as well as empty their space for the next day. That is not how we operate. Our facility is a 24-hour shelter, and there will be an advocate present around the clock to assist each participant with going outside the gate and coming inside. We do ask that you communicate with an advocate if you are leaving the campus so that we can document this on our communication board. This system is only to communicate with each shift the exact census at the time, and so that we are aware of the capacity when doing additional intakes. This is important as well. I think that the local shelters around the area are all different. Some of them specialize in homelessness, and a lot of them are not DV related. So that may be why the schedules are a bit stricter than ours would be. And also, I think that is why people assume that all shelters have the same rules. So it's important that we get the word out that it's not a punishment to be in shelter. You're not in shelter to be punished or to be monitored. It's a self-help program. We are here to help you. There are some rules, but it's not meant to feel like an institution. Okay, so that is why there isn't a curfew. The next slide says, being that there isn't a full kitchen staff like local shelters, you are responsible for your own meals while in shelter. This is fiction. There's a little bit of fact to this one. That's why I made it a point to talk about this one, and I want to specify what is true and what's not, and possibly see what draws the line. This is partially true, but not entirely. If you are a participant in shelter and you receive EBT, or you can afford grocery, you are welcome to purchase your own food and label it in the refrigerator that is designated for participants only. However, Peace River Center also has a pantry, dairy products, bread, and frozen meats that are available for participants. However, participants are responsible for cooking for themselves. There is a menu that is followed, and the shelter has specific items that are there daily. For example, if the menu says spaghetti and meatballs, corn and garlic bread, and say white milk for the drink, that is the items that will be placed out for you to cook for yourself. If the schedule says something different, then we'll just have different things out to accommodate the crowd what's in shelter. I just got a question in the chat. I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but it just says, patients, how do you all, maybe it's supposed to say, how do you all handle food allergies if someone requires specific diet needs? That's simple. If that's the case, if you have some type of food allergy or something that needs to be accommodated, we're flexible. All you have to do is just communicate that with the advocate and say, hey, my child can't drink milk, or my child needs this or that, and we'll find a way to accommodate you guys. The only reason that we try to use that schedule is just so that we can accommodate a large amount of people at once. But if you have any type of issues, any type of food allergies, just communicate that with an advocate and we'll find a way to accommodate you and your family. That is all. Let's see.
We got a Q&A. If you change your mind to go into shelter, can you still receive some services?
Sure, you can always receive services. You will receive services from the outreach office, and not necessarily from the shelter any longer, but you can definitely still receive services. You can always call the Victim Services Office, which is where outreach is located, and just explain, hey, I don't really want to go into shelter. I have some DV going on. I have some questions. You express your needs and we can go forward and just let you know what resources we have and see how we can help you. Shelter is not the only option. If that's not something you're interested in, it's not mandatory in order to receive services from Peace River.
And Patience, I had a quick question. So if someone's like, say, not everybody's the best cook, they haven't been afforded the opportunities to learn how to cook. Is that something that you can also help work with the participants on to learn to cook basic meals and to kind of form their own menus?
Sure, we can definitely do that if that's something that they're interested in. Honestly, when I worked in shelter, cooking is one of my hobbies. So I love to cook. Honestly, I would take the time and just cook for the participants when I worked in shelter, and I would cook just for everyone. And sometimes you would get some participants that come and say, hey, can I help? That also gives us a good time to kind of create a rapport with the participants and talk about different things. It's almost like a bonding method. So I would encourage that if that's something that a participant wanted to do, or they didn't have the upbringing where they learned how to cook at a younger age. That's a great idea. We could definitely do that. Sometimes we don't get participants that are interested in cooking, but if they were, that's something that we can definitely do. Okay. And the last part at the bottom where the star is, it just says that one participant can cook for the entire shelter if they would like to, but this is not a requirement. So I just say that to say, just because we take a certain meal out and say the entire shelter doesn't want to eat, it doesn't mean that we only take out food if you cook for everyone. That's not true. If you are a mother and you have a family of 5, or you have a family of 3, it doesn't really matter, and you just need food to cook for your children, that's fine too. But if you like to cook for the entire shelter, that's an option. Okay. Okay, so the next slide says fact or fiction. Advocates in shelter are able to counsel participants informally daily if needed. This is a fact. Advocates who work in shelter are there around the clock, answering emergency hotline calls, doing intakes, as well as small tasks around the shelter. Although the advocates aren't licensed therapists, it is healthy for participants to have someone to talk to frequently. This is the purpose of goal planning as well as safety planning that happens during each intake and establishes a relationship with the advocate and participant, as well as create a comfortable environment for each participant to talk. PRC also has a Gilmore office that has licensed therapists who specialize in multiple counseling methods to cater to our participants. If there is something that we cannot help with as advocates, we can refer a participant to Gilmore. This is something that I'm not sure if other people are aware of, but when I do intakes or when I speak with people over the phone, I like to ask them, would you like to have an informal counseling session with me, or would you like to have a formal counseling session with the licensed therapist? I say that specifically so that they can know exactly what I can offer. If I have a participant that just say that they're just going through a rough time and they just need someone to talk to. They burnt some bridges at home, or they don't really have a support system at home, and they just need someone to talk to about what's going on or to help them goal plan. That's totally fine. We can meet every Monday at 10 a.m. if that's what you want to do, or whatever accommodates you. Now, if the participant then explains to me, okay, I'm going through postpartum depression, or I am having a hard time eating, I'm battling an eating disorder, or I have a history of schizophrenia, I feel like I'm showing signs. Those are the things that then we will assess and say, hey, let me refer you to Gilmore. So someone with a little more background on your situation can help you. Those are the different scenarios where we would refer you to the other office. But as far as informal daily counseling, if it doesn't even have to be daily, if it wants to be weekly, you just need some encouragement, or just, you want to just communicate with us what you're doing goal planning wise, that's perfectly fine. That is what the advocates are there for, to speak with you and to advocate for you in the way that we can. Okay. Let me see. I don't see any questions. Okay, I'll move forward. Okay, so the next slide says, if you are homeless, you can still be admitted into shelter. This is a fact. Having a home has nothing to do with someone being a survivor. If someone has suffered domestic violence and happens to be homeless, they are still considered a survivor and are given the same opportunities as a survivor who has home before coming into shelter. However, if there has not been any domestic violence and an individual calls the hotline looking for shelter, we have a list of resources and we will redirect to any shelters or transitional homes that specialize in homelessness so that we can keep our beds available for incoming survivors and their families. This is one of the common misconceptions because sometimes we get survivors calling and they try to put the fact that they are homeless at the forefront because they have been turned away before. It's important that we know when you're on the hotline and if you are a survivor to just explain to us briefly. I try to tell all the survivors you do not have to go into great detail about what happened because my goal is not to make you relive the trauma. I just need to know the severity of the situation and figure out what can we do to help you as quickly as possible. So again, this is a fact. If you are homeless, you can still be admitted into shelter if you are a domestic violence survivor. And if you aren't a survivor and you're just looking for shelters that specialize in homelessness or transitional programs, we can definitely redirect you. I can give you multiple resources and we can still try to go plan quickly and figure out a way to get you to help, even if you're not a DV survivor, okay? Okay, I don't see any questions about that. So I will move forward. Okay, so the next slide says fact or fiction. There is no privacy in shelter. This is fiction. Our shelters are made to feel as comfortable as possible in a time that is very difficult for the family. Depending on the size of each family, it is possible for there to be up to 2 families in one room. And in a single participant room, there can be up to 4 participants per room. All of our rooms have doors and there is one restroom in between each room, making the setup sort of like a dorm style living situation. There is also a playground, a smoking area for adults, as well as a living room and a dining room area. We understand that the perception of a shelter is a large room full of beds, and that is not how our shelter is built. Let me check the chat. Do you all celebrate holidays and birthdays at the shelter? We actually have someone who is a donor and she donates cakes and cupcakes every month for all of the women in shelter to celebrate if there is a birthday. She also brings cakes for holidays as well. So there is kind of how we celebrate. If there are participants in the shelter that wanted to do more to celebrate, there isn't an issue with you celebrating any type of birthday or anything like that. The only thing is because we're in shelter, you won't be able to invite any family or friends, anyone outside of shelter because of confidentiality for those who are in shelter. But if you would like to celebrate, cook or get a cake for your children or yourself, it's nothing wrong with that. But we do have someone that bring in cakes and cupcakes monthly for the birthdays and also for holidays. And the staff always puts that out so that the participants can partake in that. Is there a daycare at the shelter? No, ma'am. There isn't a daycare in our shelter. That is something that we get a lot of times because a lot of parents don't have any help outside of the shelter. We do have resources that could possibly help with the daycare fees. We have applications that the advocates can help you guys fill out for ELC vouchers so that participants can possibly get daycare at a discounted rate with the ELC voucher, but we do not provide daycare at the shelter. That isn't something that comes with the procedure. I can say that when it comes to your children, it is in the handbook that they are always in your presence while in shelter, because the advocates are usually busy doing intakes, hotline calls, monitoring the shelter. They are not, it's a liability if your children are not in your care. So that is something that we do advertise all the time for the families that come into shelter to please make sure you have eyes on your children at all times so that they can be as safe as possible while in shelter. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this slide says Peace River Center Victim Services is a self-help program. This is a fact. We encourage all of our participants to use the time that they are in shelter to their advantage to help themselves. This does not mean that PRC staff isn't here to help. This program is designed to assist participants in their journey to becoming independent to help themselves. The advocates are here to possibly assist with creating or rejuvenating resumes. We can advocate on your behalf in regards to housing options, as well as submit your name to certain housing opportunities that we have access to upon availability. Outreach services, as I talked about earlier, are available. Assisting with applications for victim compensation, that is also something that we can do here in outreach, and also assisting with injunctions. There are also advocates who can accompany participants during court hearings for moral support during a difficult time. These are some of the things that are unknown. I don't think a lot of survivors know that. We can do these things for them as far as, especially when it comes to assisting them in court. I know that it can be difficult, especially in injunction court, when you have to actually face the abuser or be in the same room as the abuser. Sometimes it helps to just have someone there, that support system. That is something that can be done with no problem. The only thing with that is we are not there to speak on your behalf. So we can't act as a lawyer when it comes to that. But we do also have an injunction attorney that could possibly assist you with whatever help you may need when it comes to your injunction. As far as victim compensation, I am actually the relocation specialist here at Victim Services, and I can accompany you when it comes to completing your application, letting you know what documents you may need, and communicating back and forth with the Office of Attorney General when it comes to your compensation. Those are just a few things that comes with the things that we can do to help you guys. But this program is designed to assist you while you help yourself in your journey back to becoming independent. Is there any questions about this slide?
Can you tell them a little about, I know that you guys offer like the financial classes so that they do have opportunities to maybe learn and to grow, even education opportunities. Can you just speak a little bit about some of those options?
Okay, so financially, that is something that we would do with your primary advocate. So for an example, if you were a survivor and when the hotline rang, I answered the phone, we began to speak, I completed your intake, and I became your primary advocate. When we talk about the things that you need to complete your goal plan, or when we finish your safety plan at the bottom, when we ask you, is there anything additional that you may need to complete your goals? You will kind of explain to me the things that you may need, and we can work together and figure out what can we do to help you achieve those goals. Now, if you want any type of financial planning or goal planning, that's something that we can do budgeting wise. If we can even sit down and kind of write out a budget on your expenses. We can talk about how much money do you bring in monthly. We can talk about what money do you have to spend out, and find ways for you to save, even while you're in shelter. Really, I try to encourage all of our participants who are in shelter to use that time to their advantage. That's a great deal of time that you have to save any type of income that you have, because you're not paying any rent. If you don't have any type of food assistance from the state, there's food there. It's just so many different advantages to being in shelter that can boost you to becoming independent after your stay in shelter. That is a big thing that I like to explain to those who I speak with about shelter, because a lot of times when I ask, are you interested in shelter? The first thing they kind of say is, I don't really want to go there. And they don't really think about the advantages to being there, even though it seems like a disadvantage leaving your home and going to a shelter. It can help you tremendously in a short amount of time if you utilize the time wisely. Okay. Is there any questions about this slide? Okay, I'll move forward. Okay, so here is just a visual of the parts that we cover here, Polk, Hardy, and Highlands. This is the hotline phone number for the Lakeland campus. At the top, the second number is our Sebring Safe House. That is their hotline number. And the bottom is the Outreach Services and Victim Services phone number. I'm going to leave that for a little while so that you guys can look at it if you guys would like to write it down, or just to get a visual picture of where we are and how to contact us.
Patience, can you talk a little about like what happens when, obviously you being the relocation specialist, can you talk a little bit about how you all assist? I know even through like the Movers for Moms campaign, they sometimes bring toiletry items and household goods and stuff to really get survivors started when they get their own independent, safe housing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. So some of our participants are not even knowledgeable about the relocation assistance program. A lot of our participants don't know that it exists. So when I speak with them via phone or however we have our initial contact, I ask them, I give them a choice, what would you like to do? And I explain to them the options and how it works. We can talk a little bit about the relocation assistance program, and I can explain to you guys how it works in case you were inquiring about it. So what it is, and this is the same way I explain it to my survivors so that they can understand, because it can be confusing the way that it's presented. The state looks at the relocation application as a reimbursement. So when we submit this application, submitting this application is saying, hey, I've been in a domestic violence situation. I have relocated. This is the proof of of my new address. And can you guys reimburse me with what I spent moving costs? The reimbursement is up until $1,000. What you would have to submit is the application, which I will help you complete. You would have to submit a police report with stating you as the victim and the incident as DV related. And when I submit this application, I would have to also submit a leasing agreement or a residential agreement that has a separate address from the address that's on the police report. And that reason being is so that it can show that you have recently relocated from this address because of a domestic violence incident. Once I have those documents, we'll meet together, we'll complete the paperwork, and I can submit it on your behalf. If it's approved, I will reach out and I'll let you know when you can come and pick up your funds. The funds are meant to be used for housing only. It's supposed to be used for your housing needs, just to reimburse you for what you spent when you had to relocate due to being a victim of domestic violence. Sometimes it's easy to obtain that police report. Sometimes it's a hard time, but it's not only up to you. If the survivor's having a hard time, most of the time I can receive it without the survivor even having to go back and relive what's going on or speak with the police officers. Most of the time I can receive it. But if you already have it and that's something that you like to do, we can set it up and it can be done within one day, if that is something that a survivor is interested in. That's something that we can do here at Victim Services. As far as housing supplies, that's also something that you can speak with your primary advocate. If you have a primary advocate and you know you're a participant in our program and you're just saying, hey, I've moved in, I'm already in here, my children have A, B, and C, and we just need toiletries, or we just need comforters for our bed. That's something that we can talk about, and I can possibly speak with our financial department and see if we have funding to help you out in that way. Our main goal is just to help our participants to get independent and to just stay independent, violence free. So whatever we can do to help, we will. Do you guys have any questions about that? Okay. So I just wanted to say thank you all for listening to me. I hope all of your questions were answered and you've gained a new mindset in regards to our domestic violence shelter and also our victim services program. Again, before we end, do anyone have any questions that weren't addressed or anything that you guys wanted to ask before this session is over?
I am not seeing any questions. Thank you so much. That was a great explanation, gives us a little bit more insight.
Okay, no problem.
Perfect. Well, if anyone again does want to participate in our other webinars, by all means, check those out. They should be on our calendar. Remember, October 21st, we're a Purple Day. And again, the whole month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we encourage you to participate when you can, share our messages on social media, even if it's just sharing, you know, like we shared earlier, the 2 hotline information. You just never know when someone may need that information. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us when we send out the recording. Thank you.